Good afternoon, everybody. Today I'm chatting with Dale Verran from Fortune Bay. So Fortune Bay has some really interesting uranium projects in the Athabasca Basin that have historic drilling and they're moving forward with this summer. Now, look, Fortune Bay has some really interesting gold projects. And right now I'm kicking tires on a whole bunch of these gold juniors that I think are trading at depressed levels that have lots of historic drilling, resource estimates, and the kind of names that everybody's going to be gravitating to should the Fed have to start lowering rates and we see a big boost in gold prices. So I'm really happy to have Fortune Bay on because I think that it's a company that has the merit to make your watch list if you're looking for those kind of names to do more due diligence on. All right, everybody, enjoy the interview. Dale, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, thanks for having us.
So, Fortune Bay, you guys have some very interesting gold properties, which I find very interesting in this market where it feels like if economic data turns the wrong way and the Fed's got to pivot, there's certain gold names that I think are super interesting. I would put you guys in that basket of very interesting names for a gold bull market if that's your move. But I also understand that you guys have some uranium properties. So we'll get into that. But first, let's just talk a little bit about that gold thesis. Do you consider yourself a gold bug? Is it something that you are sort of really excited about, thinking where the future is going to go for gold?
Yeah, absolutely. When I joined the company in 2020, I've always been a gold bug as well as a uranium bug. But, gold was obviously really well positioned there. We've obviously had a tougher year here, but I think we're turning the corner. We've seen gold prices rally a bit, and certainly the outlook looks really favorable. And our company is very well positioned with almost 3 million ounces of drill-defined gold resources across our two projects.
And you guys are trading at, this is according to CEO.ca. Let me pull it up here. I think it was a market cap of, what's it, just under $10 million?
Yeah, I think it was 9 million Canadian dollars
9 million.
today.
Yeah. And so I find it crazy. You guys have 3 million from measured, indicated, and inferred in Canada and in Mexico. I'm not sure how much cash is on the balance sheet, but trading at a $9 million market cap. Why do you think that there's this lack of interest right now in gold miners? Do you think that this is a function of the Canadian junior markets, or do you think it's sort of just a function of there's just not that much interest in gold?
Yeah, definitely a function of the markets. The Canadian markets in particular have been in a tough place for some time, but also just a lack of interest in the gold equities generally. I think if you look at a number of charts, you can see these gold equities trading at record discounts to the actual price of bullion, and juniors like ourselves are probably the worst hit there, really trading at low values relative to that gold price. But I do feel things are going to start to turn, and the money will, as more interest picks up in gold, money will come into some of the equities and the juniors as well, and we'll see that space really moving.
I'm curious, has your phone been ringing a little bit more this last month or so as we've seen the price of gold start to pick up?
Yeah, for sure. Earlier this year, a lot of calls on the uranium side. Obviously, uranium had a really good run. It's come off a little bit, but more recently, a lot of calls around the gold as well. So there's certainly interest in what we're doing. We haven't done a lot of marketing recently. We had a really quiet year last year, watching our spend very carefully. But things are really picking up, and it's time to get our story out there again.
Now, my theory on part of the problem with Canada is when I look at the Canadian junior markets in particular, or just mining in general, it certainly feels like there's a lack of mines being developed. So if I'm looking at it as a junior investor, I might be saying, well, where's my upside if mines aren't going into development? And I think that it comes down to that old adage, the cure for low prices is low prices. And from my viewpoint, the only thing that is going to get more mines moving forward is higher prices. Do you think that there's an issue in Canada and even abroad where we just don't have enough mines going into development right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you look at the amount of gold that's being mined now versus what's being discovered, it's, the discovery rates have dropped off immensely. And these gold producers are going to need to look for assets, and assets like ours, particularly those in stable jurisdictions. Place like Saskatchewan is ranked #1 in Canada, 2 globally. Those places are going to come into the spotlight. And we have a very decent project in Saskatchewan, which has got a PEA. It's at current, at our upside case, which was at $19.50 an ounce, well below the current gold price. That project produces an after-tax NPV of around 460 million and an after-tax IRR of over 50%. So obviously that's going higher now, given higher gold prices. So there's going to be interest, and given the shortage of good projects in stable jurisdictions, projects like ours are going to look to move forward in this current environment.
Your Goldfields project in Saskatchewan, that would be more of a bulk tonnage type project?
That's right. It's an open pit project. There's 2 deposits on the property. The one, the box deposit, is significantly large, about 80% of the mineral resources, but decent grades, 1.3 gram a ton for open pit. If you look at our PEA from late 2022, you'll see it's, one of the lowest strip ratios in Canada you'll find for open pit project. The permitting is well advanced. It has approved EIS from 2008, which is still valid today. So, a possibility to streamline the processing and get that in production a lot sooner. There's good infrastructure. It's in a area that's seen mining in the past, some uranium mining. There's a community that understands mining. So it's got all the right things in place to move forward quickly for a fairly standard open pit operation. And also to mention that the mineralogy is very simple. So it's a very standard free milling flow sheet, no complications there. So it's a really nice project for, a miner to come in and develop in a relatively short time frame for a place like Canada.
So your background is a geologist, and I'm curious, do you think Saskatchewan is heavily underexplored? And if so, why do you think that is?
Yeah, it is. It is to an extent. Saskatchewan's fantastic in the sense all the historical exploration is very well documented. It's in databases, so you can leverage off that historical work and apply new concepts, new techniques to make discoveries. And we see that happening all the time. Certainly on the uranium front, there's also been some discoveries on the gold and base metals outside of that Athabasca Basin where the uranium is. So to an extent, it has been explored quite well, but given the amount of cover, there's still cover, lots of lakes, things like that. There's still so much opportunity, and it really is a fantastic place to work. And that's just not according to the rankings, but according to actually being active in the province for the last 10 years and know a lot of the government people, the communities, and just a fantastic place to work.
So you guys are looking for uranium in the Athabasca Basin. I hear a lot of people who have had success in the Athabasca Basin say that, well, not a lot of people, there's not too many that have had success, but it's like finding a needle in a haystack. So you guys have, I believe it's 6 projects in uranium projects in northern Saskatchewan. A couple of them have some drilling on them. It's the Strike Uranium project. I think you guys are probably the most excited about. What can you tell us about trying to find uranium in Saskatchewan? What's the strategy here?
Yeah, so we have 7 projects. Strike and Mermac are now under an option agreement where someone else is funding that. We can retain a 30% stake in that. They're going to be spending $6 million on that.
Okay.
We're also going to get some cash and shares out of that. That's going to make us quite a sustainable company. We're not going to need to go to the market much for money. We also have the Woods project, which comprises 5 different projects, which we're looking to do a similar deal to Strike and Mermac on. Now, all these projects, they're based on that northern rim of the Athabasca Basin, and that area is particularly underexplored for these high-grade basement-hosted deposits. And you mentioned, yes, these are like finding needles in a haystack. I've certainly been involved with the discovery of those when I was the VP exploration for Denison Mines, discovering the Griffin deposit and a smaller deposit called Husky, as well as enlarging their Phoenix deposit. So a lot of experience in the basin, but on that northern rim where Fortune Bay's properties are, we're just outside the basin. So we're not drilling through a lot of sandstone to find these needles in the haystack. You can use a lot more of the surface data to vector into deposits. So we're really excited about the potential there, given how underexplored that margin is for these high-grade basement hosted deposits.
I love the sort of project financing level because I think that as cute as it is as a junior investor to think that you're going to invest early in a penny stock and see the company take something to production, it's just really not that feasible unless you're prepared to take on all that dilution. So just from looking at your stock chart, which you guys were a stock during the last gold run that traded near $1.50. And today you guys are trading around 20 cents. Obviously gold stocks have come back quite a bit, which we talked about, but I take it that that's a big part of the focus of what you guys are doing is trying to find majors to work with who can really help fund the exploration.
That's right. It's all about managing the risk and dilution to our shareholders. We obviously have this good gold resource base, and we don't want to be just blowing out the stock, raising lots of money, diluting everyone. Let's have the range of uranium projects. Those are we're optioning out. We're going to see work proceed on those, and instead of diluting at the company level, we're then taking the dilution at the project level. And with all these opportunities the company has amongst the uranium properties and the gold, we have a well-managed strategy not to dilute shareholders, but to see those advance through strategic partnerships or option agreements.
Okay. So what's the plan right now for exploration? Are you guys going to have drills in the ground this spring or summer?
Yeah, that's right. Aero Energy, who's our partner at the Strike and Mermac uranium projects, they've just closed a financing for $5.9 million. So that money is going to go toward funding exploration at Strike and Mermac. We're going to see some airborne surveying start up later this month or early next month, and that's going to be followed by drilling through the summer. That's going to create some news for ourselves because we have that equity stake in the projects. And then on the Woods uranium projects, those 5 new projects, we're looking to get those funded and work started this year as well. So we'll see some initial airborne surveying groundwork, and then with a view to potentially drilling much later in the year or early in 2025.
I'm curious. I know that there's some bigger names out there that put out news with some of their airborne surveys, and they're putting out data. Are you really quick to read these news releases and try to figure out how, when other companies spend a lot of money on drilling, how you can take advantage of their data?
Absolutely. The key is to keep an eye on what everyone's doing and learn from other people's experiences, their data sets, what they drill, what their results are. Exploration, there's models that apply, but those are continually evolving, and it's important to stay in step with those and apply that understanding to your project. So we certainly watch what other people do from the point of view of learning on how better to find deposits, but also in terms of continuing to look for opportunities in the Athabasca Basin. We've got a number of ideas and are looking to continue to stake new projects and apply that project generator model to our activities on the uranium side.
So I'm getting the sense here that right now you guys are just finding that there's generally more interest in the uranium right now than there is in the gold.
Absolutely. I mean, I think over the last few months, uranium's been super hot and certainly a lot of interest, and remains to be a lot of interest, particularly, from also investors outside of Canada, people seeing opportunities and realizing the Athabasca Basin is the place to be. But, as you mentioned, the phone has been ringing on the gold side as well. So I think that could, be turning the corner as well. So we could get really busy and see a lot of money flow into our projects, lots of activity, and we'll retain that upside for our shareholders at the same time as building a sustainable business that has revenues from cash share payments, operating some of these projects ourselves. So I think the future's we're really excited about how we position at the moment.
So do you guys consider yourselves to be sort of a project generator, or is it sort of a project generator on the uranium side and sort of exploration developer on the gold side. Is that kind of what I'm understanding?
Yeah, it's a good question. I had that the other day, and I think the answer is we are sort of transitioning to a project generator. Initially when we started, we had the two gold assets. We were pushing those forward ourselves. We're in a position now where we're starting to farm out the uranium stuff, let other people spend on that, and we would consider that for the gold projects as well. But I think the important thing is we're not going to give these good assets away for nothing. We're going to make sure any deal we do in this current environment respects the value we see in those assets. And you can, from a Mexican asset to our Saskatchewan gold project. So it's we open for business in that respect, but only going to proceed with the right partners that on the right terms. So broadly speaking, yeah, we could be looked at as somewhat of a project generator, but that's not to say we wouldn't advance some of the projects ourselves if we can raise money at the right levels and find the right ways to add value to those projects that the market will recognize.
I always like to say that project generators are project generators until they hit something with bonanza grades, and then suddenly they're a single project focused company.
Exactly. And I think, in these markets and in the exploration business, you need to be nimble, adaptable. Things change. And, we've also changed. We've done that by still managing our dilution very carefully and being opportunistic around some of the uranium, seeing a little bit ahead of where that was going and getting in early with some of our staking and projects. So one's got to be flexible. And I think that's how you ultimately will build value. And, certainly the big prize always comes with the discovery, and we're trying to position all our projects so that we can do that, as well as see some of these gold assets, get into production, where we can, have a future form of significant revenue.
Okay, so something we love to ask companies about because of the nature of the Canadian junior markets, of which I'm sure you've seen a lot of stuff over the years that makes you sort of scratch your head and wonder how it's even allowed with the regulators. But when we look at your cap table, if shareholders are concerned that you got these founders with cheap shares that are looking to blow them out, or some of those projects that were maybe purchased in ways that might be a little bit questionable by shareholders if they actually knew what happened. Can you talk about your cap table and why shareholders should feel comfortable with how the shares are distributed?
Yeah, so I mean, we have a significant insider ownership at 16% there. And the balance of the shares is really held amongst friends, family. It's a tightly held company. We've never had an experience of people blowing out shares. Certainly there's no record of insiders doing that. I think, from our executive chairman, Wade Dorr, he's a believer in long-term value. He was part of our predecessor companies that acquired the gold assets. He's hung in there for years and years, through the lulls, even when our price went up over $1, because there's a lot of value here. So, we tightly held amongst a close network, and the shareholders, and I know a lot of the shareholders personally. There's a few bigger shareholders there as well. They're all in it for the long term because they see the value in this company and the value we're building. So we're not trying to pump the stock. We don't market a lot. You won't see us spending a lot on marketing, but we're trying to build real value. And our core team is largely technical. I'm a geologist by background, our technical director too. And we're really focusing on the right things to build that value over time without much promotion.
So if I'm an investor watching and I'm curious about what the remainder of 2024 could look like in terms of potential news, milestones, catalysts, that sort of stuff, what am I watching out for the remainder of the year?
Well, I think next up will be some announcement for our Strike and Mermac uranium projects as those advance through airborne surveying and then drilling. Going to see some results come through those. Secondly, we can see the Woods uranium projects comprised of those 5 different projects, potentially announcing a transaction and work commencing on those. And then on the gold side, lots of parties looking at those projects. So we could also see a transaction announced there, or even us start to do some additional work. There's some great exploration opportunities at our project in Saskatchewan. And then the Mexican asset, we've done some work down there last year, looking at the data, some community visits, so potential to also see that asset starting to move in this better market. But certainly lots of fronts on which we can push and get some news going and activity for the company.
Okay, well, Dale, thanks so much for hopping on here today. I think that you guys have a very interesting story. Who knows where the uranium market's going to take us? I know it's been volatile and upwards to the right, and who knows exactly how high it can go and at what point we're going to start to see capital start to really flow into a bunch of these juniors that have great projects. And I am a gold bull, I have to say, when I see projects that have resources similar to you guys and trading at market caps like where you guys are trading. I find it really interesting. So thanks for hopping on here, and hopefully in the future you'll hop back on when there's developments and you guys hit a big discovery and we can learn more.
Thanks, Steve. Really good speaking to you.
All right, everybody. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this interview, please smash that like button, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Also, let me know what you think in the comment section. Thanks, everyone.